So do you feel a sense of fulfillment with the retreat coming, drawing to a conclusion? Yeah. We made it. Some people come to retreat thinking, oh, this is going to be so hard, I'll never make it. And we all made it. Very well. Yeah. So people usually wonder then too how, what do you do when you leave here? Yeah, and go back into the unreal world. So you take everything you've learned here with you. You don't leave it here. Yeah, you take it all in your heart, in your mind, with you as you go wherever you go, and you share it with others through your actions, through your speech, through keeping a daily practice, to really nourish yourself spiritually. As for what daily practice to do exactly what we've been doing here. You don't need to do anything different, and you're already in a routine of getting up in the morning and meditating in the evening. So I would say, as much as you can keep that routine in your daily life, do that. The time is always there. The thing is, if we make the time. But there's always 24 hours in the day. It's never like there's only 22 or 23. It's just how we're choosing to use the time. Okay? So put, your spiritual nourishment together with your, physical nourishment, and do both of them every day. And like I said, do 35 Buddhas. If you don't have it memorized, tape it, and then play the tape while you're bowing, and in that way you can learn to memorize it. Then when you have it memorized, you can turn off the tape. Okay? Do the Chenrezig practice, and some of the Lamrim meditation. You've had plenty of teachings now. You've done some of the Lamrim. So write up your own outlines if you need to, or use the ones in the book. Sorry, this thing is not being so comfortable today. And then just do the Lamrim meditations like they should be done, and experience the benefit from doing that, and rejoice. Okay? So, as you leave the Abbey, some of you leaving today, tomorrow, 4 years from now, never, just take everything you've learned here with you and really apply it and use it. And it will really benefit you and the people around you, both in this life and in future lives. Okay? So, I wanted to finish the text today. Can you imagine? Yeah. So we're on the last of the four, parting from the four clingings. If grasping arises, it is not the view. Okay, so if grasping here means grasping at true existence, inherent existence, in other words, thinking that things exist on their own, independent of all other factors, that they somehow have their own essence, have their own characteristics, have their own uniqueness that doesn't depend on anything else. Okay? So if we grasp at that kind of view, that's how things exist, then we're grasping at an erroneous view. Okay? Because things don't exist that way. They appear appear to our senses and to our mind as well to exist independent in that way. But when we do even a little bit of analysis or checking, we soon discover that it's impossible for anything to exist the way it appears to us. And it's such a paradox, because things appear to us, we assume that they really exist that way. We never question it. And yet, when we just question it a little bit, the whole thing falls apart. Yeah, and we go, how come I haven't gotten it beforehand? Well, when it first falls apart, it means we're getting it intellectually. Yeah, we're understanding emptiness intellectually somewhat. Maybe it's a correct assumption, something like that. But it's going to take time for that correct assumption to really become an inferential understanding, and then, which is still conceptual, and then later to become a direct perceiver of emptiness. Yeah, and it's when we first start checking and we go, well, of course things exist dependently. It doesn't necessarily move us a whole lot, yeah, because we haven't really realized the impact, yeah, and it's through continually practicing this and familiarizing our minds with this that then the impact of the fact that things don't have inherent existence really begins to hit us. Okay? So one of the easiest ways just to start questioning something is flowers. Flowers are very helpful, as examples. So if when we look at a flower, look at that big sunflower there, or maybe the white one, or whatever you want to look at, okay? And the way it appears to you, it appears as a flower, right? Yeah? And does it appear to you as if, of course it's a flower? Anybody who walks in the room who's not, crazy would know that that's a flower. Does it appear to you that way? Yeah, it's like there's no doubt about it. That's a flower. And it appears like, that is a flower. There is a flower, a real flower there, right? A real one. Yeah. And it has some kind of essence of flower in it, because when you walk in the room, that's why you see flower, because it is a flower. It's not just called a flower or anything like that. It is one. Yeah? Does it appear to you that way? Yeah? Okay. Now, let's see if it really is a flower. And also, when you look at it, it looks like the whole thing is a flower, doesn't it? Yeah? Doesn't it? The whole thing is a flower. Not just part of it is a flower. The whole thing is a flower. Okay. But if you take the flower and you start pulling the petals off, yeah, at a certain point, are you going to still say it's a flower? When all the petals are off and lined up here, is it a flower at that point? Is it a flower or isn't it a flower? Would you give a lot of, what's the center part called? The center part of the flower. Okay, so if you gave a bouquet consisting of center parts of a flower to somebody and said, "Happy birthday," are they going to say thank you for the lovely flowers? I don't think so. Yeah. At what point, when you're taking the flowers off, does it stop being a flower? The petals off. Does it stop being a flower and start just being the center part? Yeah. Can you isolate exactly how many petals have to be there for it to continue to be a flower? It's hard, isn't it? We can't really say how many petals have to be there or how many are going to be removed for it to be something else. But if it were a real flower and the whole thing were a flower, that would mean that every part of the flower would be a flower, would have that flower essence in it. Which would mean when you lined up the petals, you would then have many flowers. Okay. Or, as you take the petals off, and you take the stem off, and the pistils and stamens and all those things off, where did the flower go? In fact, you may have all the same parts sitting here on the table, but do you say there's a flower on the table when all the parts are just there? Okay, so was our initial, the initial way the flower appeared to us as being a real flower through and through, having the essence of flowerness, was that appearance accurate or mistaken? It's mistaken. Okay. Now, look at a person. Yeah, just pick somebody. When you look at that person, it appears to be a real person, right? Even when you think of yourself. Yeah, I'm a real person. I am here. Yeah, I function, I do things, I'm independent, I'm in control, I walk and talk and think and sleep and do so many things, and I am real. Right? Yeah, I make my own decisions, or at least I try to. Yeah. Sometimes I'm influenced by other people, but what to do. I still make my own decisions. Yeah. Okay. Now, so there's a real person there. Now, when the mind goes away from that real person, we say the person's dead, right? When you look at the person's body, do you say there's the person? No. You just say there's the body of the person. But when the person's alive and you look at their body, you say there's the person. So is the body the person or not the person? Because when the person's alive, you say, there's Joe. When they're dead, you say, there's Joe's corpse. Okay? So, who actually is that person? Is the body the person? If it were, then you would say there's Joe, both when the body were alive and when the body were dead. You would still say it's a person, because it would be a real person. But it's not. Joe's not there. Well, maybe Joe is the mind. And when the mind is there, then Joe is there. Now, what do you think? Maybe the mind is Joe. Well, Joe has many states of mind, many types of consciousness. You know, Joe has an eye consciousness, ear consciousness, you know, auditory, olfactory consciousness, gustatory consciousness, tactile consciousness, mental consciousness. Which one of those consciousnesses is Joe? If you say Joe is the I consciousness, then that means Joe can't hear, because Joe's not the ear consciousness. Yeah. Well, maybe Joe's the mental consciousness. Yeah. Mental consciousness thinks. Yeah, Joe could be blind and deaf and Joe would still be there. So maybe the eye, you know, the visual consciousness and auditory consciousness aren't so important. You know, Joe's really the mental consciousness. Well, which mental consciousness is Joe? The angry one? The loving one? The sleeping one? The scheming one? The happy one? Yeah. Where are you going to find Joe? Who exactly is Joe? Yeah, when we say Joe is here, what in the world are we talking about? Yeah. Who is here when we say Joe is here? Because we're looking in the mind, we're looking in the body. We can't find any of those things that are Joe. If both the body and mind are gone, we wouldn't say Joe is here at all. If you do, somebody puts you in the yeah, they institutionalize you. Oh, there's Joe, he just walked in the room. Really? So, what does the word Joe refer to? Who really is Joe? Yeah, because we thought there was a real person there. That's what we agreed on before we started, didn't we? That there was a real person there. But when we look for exactly what that real person is, we can't find anything whatsoever. We can find the parts of the person, but the parts of the person are not the person. The body and mind, the 5 aggregates, none of them are the person. And yet we can't find the person separate from the 5 aggregates, from the body and mind. But when the body and mind are there, exactly what is the person? When we say, I love you or I hate you, just what are we loving and what are we hating? Okay? So are you getting some idea of the fact that how things appear to us is not how they exist? They appear very real, very solid, that they're objective entities. But, we've done this very simple analysis, and we realize that they can't be any kind of objective entities with their own essence, because if they were, we should be able to find what that essence was and exactly what they were. But the more we analyze, the more we look, instead of what we think is there becoming more visible and more prominent, it becomes more elusive. And we become more puzzled. Yeah. So when we analyze, we can't find Joe. And yet, when we don't analyze, if somebody says, "Where's Joe?" we say, "He's over there." And everybody understands. And somebody calls, "Hey, Joe," and Joe answers, "Here I am." So when we don't analyze, it all somehow works. But when we do look for who Joe is, or who the other people around are, or for that matter who I am, what the word I refers to, it gets kind of vague there. We can't really pinpoint anything. Okay? When you think of a person that you have a strong emotion for, like you really love them or you really dislike them, yeah. Did any of you pick that kind of person when I said think of a person? Yeah, somebody you have strong emotions for. And do you feel differently about that person now, after just reflecting in this way? Yeah, you do, don't you? Like, well, exactly who or what do I hate? Or who or what do I love? Yeah? Really kind of strange, isn't it? Okay, so what we're getting at is things do not have any type of objective existence out there. Yeah. Things exist only dependently by the parts coming together, yeah, or by causes producing something, and then all together we agree on a name to call this thing, and we call it that name. And that's the only way things exist. Yeah. There's some basis there. Yeah. We pick out some things, put them together, develop an idea, oh, this must be a thing, and give it a word, give it a name that we all agree on, and then it exists. Yeah? And yet, in our day-to-day life, we don't think that's how things come into existence. We think first there's real things and real people out there, and I just happen to bump into them and perceive them for what they really are, as some kind of objective entity. Yeah. But if they were an objective entity, we should all see the same things in the same way. It should be beautiful to everybody, or it should be ugly to everybody, because it would have that nature objectively from its own side. But nothing is like that. Okay, even what we call things, you know, we often, you know, we look at something and we think, oh, that is this, okay? Like, oh, you look at a map and you see the boundary of Iraq, and you look within the boundary and you say that is Iraq. And if you went there to that place when you were at those different cities and different places, you would say, I'm in Iraq. And everybody would be okay with it. Except ISIS looks at that same land that maybe you call Iraq and says it's the Islamic State. It's not Iraq. So which one is it? They're calling it the Islamic State. You're calling it Iraq. Which one is it? Okay. I mean, think about, now when we think of the U.S., you know, we all have that picture of the map, right? With Alaska and Hawaii somewhere out there, you know, but the 48 states and then the 2 extra ones. We looked at that. What was the map? What did the map of the U.S. look like right after the revolution? It was 13 small colonies, right up here. Well, from your side it would be the other. My side looking at it. They're right up here, you know. Just 13 colonies. That was the U.S. And this land here was not the U.S. Yeah, this was native land. Was it really part of Canada?
It was.
Well, Canada stole it from the natives.
Well, yeah, but it was further south. And the U.S. they stole it first. There wasn't a Canada.
Yeah, at the time of the 13 colonies, there wasn't Canada. Okay, so this is the point, isn't it? Yeah, this is exactly the point. What is something? Yeah, what is it? What in the world is it? Because if it were inherently the U.S. or Canada, or the native lands, which both the U.S. and Canada stole, you know, then it would be obvious to everybody. Yeah. But actually, you know, this dirt, yeah. Anyway, is the dirt the country? Yeah. If you pick up a handful of dirt, you know, like you say, oh, well, this is the U.S. or this is Canada, this is native land. You pick up that dirt.
Throw it over there.
Yeah. 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 Throw it across the border. Yeah. But we look at that dirt. But so first of all, which country is it? Or whose land is it? Yeah. But also, if that were the country, then when we're saying that the U.S. is fighting a war against ISIS, that dirt would be fighting the war, because that dirt is the U.S. I don't think that dirt is fighting a war. So when we say this is the U.S., exactly what are we referring to? Because we think, oh, it's the land. But then, if it were, then, when we say the U.S. taxes its citizens, or the U.S. fights a war, or the U.S., whatever, is slashing Social Security payments, do we mean the dirt is doing all of that? It's not the dirt. So who's doing this? The government. But is the U.S. the same as the U.S. government? Because if it were, then if we said the U.S. is slashing taxes, Social Security benefits, let's do that one. So it's slashing Social Security benefits. The U.S. is doing that. And we mean the U.S. government is doing that, because the U.S. government is the U.S. Then the dirt would also be the U.S. government, because we call the dirt the U.S. Sometimes. Not all the time. Sometimes the dirt is the U.S., sometimes it's not the U.S. Yeah. So exactly what are we referring to? Well, is the U.S. the people? But the people in the U.S. are changing moment by moment, because new people are being born and other people are dying. So what exactly is the U.S. if there's this constantly changing population? And if all those people went to live on the moon, would the moon then become the U.S.?
It already is.
No, they're just jealous because they want to be the 51st state, and and Mexico's going to beat them to it. Okay. So, when we look at any of these things, when we don't analyze, we all generally know what we're talking about until we quarrel about it. Yeah? And we fight wars over names. Yeah? Is this land ISIS, or is it Iraq? Or is it Syria? Or is it Kurdistan? And we're going to fight a war over what to call that dirt. Okay? This is the disadvantage of when it says, if grasping arises, it is not the view. This is the disadvantage of if grasping arises. Yeah? Is that we will fight names thinking that things have real essences. So they really are this country or that country, or a person or not a person or whatever it is. And yet, in actual fact, all these things, we don't know exactly what they are when we analyze and try and find them. When we don't analyze, we all use the words and we somehow miraculously understand each other until we don't. But what do these words actually refer to? Yeah? And how do things really exist? Okay? So this is what we're getting at, because when we think that the word is the object, then we get very possessive of it. When we think the word is that collection of parts, then we concretize everything. And when we concretize things, we fight over it. Or we desire it, we crave it to, make us happy. So, when he says, in whatever way you abide in reality, there is no release as long as you grasp. That's what he's talking about. There is no freedom from samsara as long as we're grasping things as inherently existent or independently existent. Okay? Then it says, to explain this in greater detail, there is no liberation for those who grasp at existence. There is no higher rebirth for those who grasp at non-existence. Those who grasp at both are ignorant. So place your mind freely in the non-dual sphere. When it says grasp at existence, it means grasp at true or inherent or objective existence. If we grasp at things, in this way, and we think that things exist the way they appear to us from their own side, independent of anything else, then we're never going to be liberated from cyclic existence, because we're always going to crave things, and we're always going to be angry and jealous and proud, because all those things, all those disturbing emotions rise up from the basis of misapprehending how things exist. Okay? So if we're grasping at true existence, no liberation. If we go to the other extreme, and say, well, if things don't truly exist, in other words, if I can't find what they are when I analyze, then they don't exist at all. So there's nothing there. Yeah, everything is just a hallucination. There is nothing there. Yeah. Then that's the other extreme of non-existence. Yeah. And both the extreme of true existence and the extreme of total non-existence are based on the same wrong idea, which is, if it truly exists, it must exist. And if it doesn't, or if it exists, it must truly exist. And then, if it isn't truly existent, that means it's totally non-existent. Okay? So, those two extremes are based on the same confusion of confusing existence and true existence, thinking they're the same when they aren't. And on the other side, confusing the lack of true existence, which we call emptiness, with not total non-existence, and thinking those two are the same, which they're not. Emptiness doesn't mean non-existence. because it's empty of true existence, empty of inherent existence, empty of objective existence. It's talking about being empty of a certain kind of existence that we falsely project onto it. It doesn't say it's empty of all existence whatsoever. So the danger of clinging to true existence or objective existence is we don't attain liberation. The danger of clinging to non-existence and saying nothing exists because I can't find anything when I analyze and try and find it. Then, if you think nothing exists, that's that wrong view that enables us to rationalize everything. Oh, those people don't really exist. So it doesn't matter if I kill them because they're not there to start with. Yeah, and therefore you accumulate an incredible amount of negative karma, harming others, fueled by that wrong view of nihilism, thinking nothing exists. So that's why it says there is no higher rebirth for those who grasp at non-existence. Because if we grasp at non-existence, we create all sorts of negative karma. And so there's no higher rebirth, that's going to come from that wrong view. And then if you grasp at both, things truly exist and they're totally non-existent. That's like saying something is permanent and impermanent at the same time. There are people who say such things, but if you think about it, it's impossible. Yeah? So that's why it says, if you grasp at both, you're ignorant. Okay. So rather than grasping at any of those extreme views, which either lead us to a lower rebirth or keep us imprisoned in cyclic existence, place your mind freely in the non-dual sphere. Okay? So that means focus the mind on the lack of true existence. Okay? Focus your mind on the emptiness of true existence. So when we talk about the non-dual sphere, we're talking about things, there's no appearance of either subject or object. There's no appearance of true existence. Yeah, only emptiness appears when the mind is focused on this non-dual sphere. Okay? Then, for the other two verses, I thought to read from one of the commentaries, or a couple of the commentaries. Yeah. So the first commentary, okay, this is the one I spoke about on the first day by Gorampa. Okay, so this one's by Gorampa. So he's saying that there's one method of meditation on the selflessness of persons and the meditation on the selflessness of phenomena. And then there's another way of meditating on emptiness, which is taught in this text, where you engage in the following three meditative practices during meditative equipoise. So meditative equipoise is when you have, full concentration, full serenity, and you can focus your mind single-pointedly on the object. So there's three meditative practices that you do during the meditative equipoise. One is establishing appearances as aspects of the mind. Two is establishing the mind as illusion. And 3 is establishing illusion as devoid of inherent existence. And then Gorampa says, okay, so that's what you do during the meditation session. During the post-meditation periods, you practice viewing everything as illusions and dreams, not thinking that they are illusions and dreams, but they are like illusions and dreams. And in that way, you don't cling to them. Okay? However, if you undertake these meditative practices without relying on a teacher's instruction, you risk becoming confused. Furthermore, since these cannot be learned merely through words, I will not elaborate further. And then he goes on to the next topic. Okay? There's a little bit more explanation in the commentary by Kunga Lekpe Rinchen, who lived in the 15th century. Okay, so he first talks about, how to develop serenity, which we won't cover today. And then he goes into the practice of developing insight, okay, and he has slightly different words for those 3 points. Okay, he calls the first one establishing the appearances of objects as mental constructs. Okay, Gorampa called it. Gorampa. Yeah. Okay, as establishing appearances as aspects of the mind. Then the second one, establishing perceptions as illusions, which the other one called establishing the mind as illusion. And then third, establishing illusions as devoid of inherent existence, and which is the same as the other one, as Gorampa. Okay, so the wording for the first 2 is slightly different. Okay, so then for the first one, establishing the appearance of objects as mental constructs. He says, every object that appears, horses, elephants, men, women, walls, vases, woolen fabric, and so on, none of these diverse appearances comes into being from no cause. Okay? So things are not created causelessly. They are not created by a diviner or by the god Ishvara. So that's what the text we've been chanting says. Okay, so they're not created causelessly. They're not created by some permanent cause, like an external creator. They do not originate from the 4 elements or from atoms. Okay, so they don't arise from any kind of truly existent causes. Nor are they conjured by the Buddhas. Nor did someone just paint a picture and, make it alive. They come, okay, so here it's very interesting, to really think that things don't come into existence without causes. Things depend on causes. They can't, things that function and change, they depend on causes. Already, the fact that they depend on causes means that they can't be independent objects. Because independent objects don't depend on causes. But we look around, every single thing we look at depends on a cause. So it can't be independent. Okay? Things they're not created by a permanent cause, such as here the god Ishvara, or the theistic, any kind of theistic god who is a creator, who's said to be permanent, right? In theistic religions, God is permanent. God was not caused. God has always been there, and yet God can act as a cause. How can something which is not under the influence of causes itself become a cause for something else? Because something that is not caused is permanent. Yeah, meaning it doesn't change moment to moment. If a God didn't change moment to moment, then how does that God create? Because creation involves change, doesn't it? Something's there and it's different than it was before. And even God changes in the process of creating. The God before creation and the God after creation are different. So how can you say that things come from a permanent external being? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It can't be like that. Okay? Things do not originate from the four elements or from atoms. Okay? So this is referring to, in ancient India, they had this theory, not too much unlike in the West in the early days, trying to find the smallest particles that compose things. So they had this idea of these independent particles. Some were earth particles, they were hard. Some were water particles, they helped things cohese. Cohese, the verb. Come together, yeah. Okay. There were other atoms that were fire, meaning they were hot. There were other atoms that they called wind or air, and which meant motion. Okay. Then there were other atoms that were colors, other atoms that were sounds, other atoms that were smells, atoms that were tastes, atoms that were tactile objects. Okay? So all of these, they called these atoms. And these atoms were all the smallest particle that was indivisible. It had no parts, so it could not be divided into something else. Okay, however, if things don't have any parts, and they're the smallest and cannot be subdivided, how can they come together to make big objects? Because if they have no parts, you can't have two atoms next to each other, because that would mean they would have parts, one part that touched the other atom and the other part that didn't. So if they didn't have any parts, if they came together, shoop, they would just totally merge into one other partless thing that didn't get any bigger. Okay, so that doesn't make any sense either. Okay. And they weren't conjured up by the Buddhas. Buddha didn't say, okay, let's create something, because Buddha doesn't have that power to, And then Buddha would certainly never create samsara. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the arguments that I had as a child, If God is compassionate, why did God create this mess? Yeah. And yet, when you read some of the things in the Bible, God doesn't sound like a really nice guy sometimes. I'm not sure I would want to meet him in an alley alone at night. Yeah? Yeah? I mean, he smites all these people and... yeah? Okay? So things don't exist in any of those ways. They come into being due to the power of latencies on our, latencies for this or that, impressions or propensities that have been left upon your mind since beginningless time. Meditate that mind is the creator of all of these, and that apart from the mind, there is no other creator. Okay? So what that means is that our mind is involved in creating our world and in creating our experiences. And what specifically, it doesn't mean that there's some mind, disembodied mind sitting there that says, okay, I'm going to create America. And then America goes poof and comes into existence. Doesn't mean that. It means that our mind is involved in labeling things. It's involved in conceiving things. And conceiving things and giving them a name is involved in this process of creating what they are and making them something. Okay? And different people have different propensities. Yeah? In fact, different living beings have different propensities. So what their minds perceive and how their minds perceive it is going to differ according to the propensities on their mind stream, that are ripening in that particular rebirth. Okay? So with our senses, we look at the room and we see it one way. If a dog or a cat comes into here, or a stink bug, how they see this room is totally different. Okay? So what something is depends a lot on what karma is ripening at a particular moment, what body we're in, what kind of sense organs we have, how our mind is functioning. Okay, then the second point, establishing perceptions as illusions. Okay, so it is stated the magician conjures forms, creating horses, elephants, and various carriages. Though appearing real, none exists as it appears. Understand that this is true, too, of all phenomena. Okay? So if a magician creates something, in ancient India it seems that there were magicians who could cast a spell on things. Sometimes they had some kind of cream or substance they put on something, and then they said some kind of spell. And then there was the appearance of horses and elephants right there. Yeah? So there's the appearance of horses and elephants, but they aren't real horses and elephants. But if you hold them, if you don't know that they're only appearances and you think they're real, then you get very excited. Oh, there's a horse. I want to jump on it. Oh, there's an elephant. It's a wild elephant. Get out of the way. It's kind of like, how when you have puppies and kitties, they'll go to the mirror and try to play with the puppy or the kitty in the mirror. Yeah, they think it's a real one. It's only a reflection. It doesn't exist the way it appears. People sometimes too do that. Yeah? You look in the mirror and you go, you're so ugly, or you're so beautiful. There's no person in the mirror. Yeah? Or you get mad at yourself and you throw something at the mirror. Why are you throwing something at the mirror? There's no person there. Or it's like watching a screen where there's a movie playing. Oh, there's real people there. Oh, they said this, they said that. You get all excited about what's happening between them. There's no people there. No people. Yeah? Okay? So the idea is that the appearances are there, but there's nothing real and substantial there. But you can't say that nothing is there because the appearances are there. Okay. So, while in one way it doesn't make sense getting all excited about what's happening on the screen because there aren't any real people. Yeah. It's only an analogy of things not existing the way they appear. Because when we look at regular people, we say they are empty of inherent existence. But we don't say they are totally non-existent. It's just that they don't exist inherently as they appear to. For that reason, because we're just negating inherent existence, we're not negating all existence. It's very important to keep good ethical conduct, because those people who are simply appearances feel pleasure and pain. Just like we, who are also just an appearance, feel pleasure and pain. So it's very important to keep good ethical conduct, which means don't cause harm. Okay? So this whole point is very interesting and very important, that just because we're negating inherent existence, it doesn't mean that there's nothing. It doesn't mean there's no good, there's no bad, it doesn't matter what you do. No. The more you understand emptiness, the more you actually are very mindful of your ethical conduct, because you realize that those people, even though they're just appearances, feel pleasure and pain, and that the law of karma functions, and that we will experience the results of our own actions. Okay? As stated here, all the diverse appearances of objects described above are like dreams and like illusions. Like a dream, even though you undergo various experiences of suffering, when you wake up, you realize that these experiences were unreal. Meditate by contemplating. They appear as mere conventional truths. They are like the reflection of forms in a mirror until ascertainment arises. Okay? Then the third point, establishing illusions. So all these things that are like illusions to us, establishing them as devoid of inherent existence. So meditate by reflecting. These appearances of objects resemble illusions. They arise as diverse appearances merely on the conventional level. So merely on the level where we do not analyze to try and find what they are. Therefore, appearance itself is not being negated. We're not negating the existence of conventional objects. When analyzed, however, when we take these conventional things and analyze them, trying to find out what they really are, not even a thickness of a hair split into 100 fractions is established on the ultimate level. So you can't even find this tiny little thing under ultimate analysis when you're looking and analyzing to find what something is. Okay? Then, having affirmed the points in their respective sequence, such as establishing the appearance of objects as constructed by the mind, and so on, realize and ascertain emptiness, which transforms every extreme of conceptual elaboration. Okay, so emptiness, the lack of independent existence. You cannot get emptiness just by concept. Yeah? You have to go beyond concepts to understand it. And emptiness itself is beyond concepts. Mm-hmm. So with your mind abiding single-pointedly, meditate on the point where the mind that cognizes in such manner, so the mind that cognizes things as lacking inherent existence, and the object, which is emptiness, the ultimate mode of being. So the mind apprehending emptiness and the object, emptiness of inherent existence, have fused indivisibly into a single taste. So the subject and the object have fused like water poured into water, or the absorption of melted butter into melted butter. As you persistently cultivate familiarity with this, your acquaintance will grow. Okay? And then, driven by your understanding of emptiness, when you then refer and think about sentient beings that appear to your mind, compassion will arise towards those sentient beings who have failed to understand emptiness. Okay? So even though you're seeing things as not inherently existent, you still have compassion. The delusion of grasping at substantial entities will be dislodged, and the state of perfect Buddhahood, the embodiment of the three Buddha bodies, known as the dawning of delusions as wisdom, or the dawning of afflictions as wisdom, will become manifest. So you hear this expression sometimes, the dawning of afflictions as wisdom, and you go, huh? How can my afflictions become wisdom? Here he's saying exactly what it means. Okay? The state of perfect Buddhahood, the embodiment of the three bodies. You know, the Dharmakaya, yeah, or truth body, the resource body, the emanation body. Having attained those three bodies of the Buddha is known as the dawning of delusions as wisdom. Okay? And then we dedicate, through the merit derived from this virtue of presenting parting from the four clingings, may all beings of the 7 classes without exception be led to the ground of Buddhahood. I don't know what the 7 classes are, and none of them have mentioned it here. So someday, if you come across something that talks about 7 classes, let me know. Okay.
Is it 6 realms of ordinary beings and then the Arya?
Maybe. I don't know. Okay. And then let's start this. Just read the first one. You do this at the end as something auspicious. My teachers who are so kind, meditation deities so compassionate, to you I go for refuge from my heart. Pray bestow your blessings upon me. Conduct contrary to the teachings has no use. Thus to act in accordance with the teachings, there is the instruction on parting from the 4 clingings. I offer this to your very ears. If you cling to this life, you are not a practitioner. If you cling to the 3 realms, that is not renunciation. If you cling to self-interest, you are not a bodhisattva. If grasping arises, that is not the view. It's a beautiful text, isn't it? Yeah? Does it mean something more to you now than the first time you chanted it? Yeah? Each day when you chant it now, are you seeing things in the words that you didn't see before? Yeah, quite beautiful.